Welcome to Learn About Law. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law, and today we're going to talk about factors that courts consider when awarding maintenance awards in divorce. We've done about 12 articles on this subject at learn-about-law.com, where we go over each of the 11 factors in detail. So if you want more information on any of them, you can go to our website. Today we're going to give a broad overview and just basically list what the factors are. But we'll probably do videos in the future associated with each of those articles that goes over each of the factors in more detail. So the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act provides that the court can award and has broad discretion to award maintenance or alimony from one spouse to the other in a divorce. And what that is, it's different from child support. Child support is a payment that's intended to be for the child and for the upbringing of a child of a divorce. The maintenance award is to allow the spouse seeking maintenance to maintain the standard of living that they had during the marriage, or to be able to seek career opportunities or education that they otherwise would have had but for the marriage. So it's a payment intended for the spouse, not for the child. And it's a little bit different from property division, because property division is dividing assets that were marital assets equitably, but this is an ongoing payment from one spouse to the other. And it can be a lump sum payment, it can be a payment for a fixed temporary period of time, or it can be a payment for an indefinite or permanent period of time. And maintenance awards can come either out of the income ongoing of the spouse from whom maintenance is sought, or it can come from their assets. So you can basically have a bank account pay part of the maintenance award as opposed to just a monthly payment. So the IMDMA, the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act, lists 11 factors that courts are supposed to consider. And again, courts have broad discretion, but the rule of thumb is to try to give each spouse a similar standard of living after the marriage. The first factor is the income of each spouse. So the higher the spouse's income, if they're seeking maintenance, the higher their own income, the less of a chance that they're going to receive a maintenance award. Now, this is relative to one another. So even if one spouse has a really high income, but the other spouse has an even higher income, then a maintenance award might be appropriate. So we're not looking at average incomes here. We're looking at income relative to one another. Number two is the needs of each party. So the court will look on a case-by-case factual analysis and try to figure out what each party needs. And part of that is not just subsistence, but they look at whether one parent is the custodial parent. So aside from child support, that parent might not be able to work a full-time job, so they'll have a need for a greater maintenance award. But any factors that play into what expenses or what needs that party has, the court can consider. Number three is the present or future earning capacity of each party. So different from income. Income is the current income of each party. Earning capacity is what that party's education or background will allow them to earn in the future. So if the spouse seeking maintenance maybe didn't have a job because he or she was a homemaker during the marriage, but has a doctorate, then certainly the maintenance award is going to be less because they're going to have the ability to go and get a high-paying job. So we look at the future earning capacity. We also look at it, if people are close to retirement, that'll factor in as well, because you're playing this out for the next 15 or 20 years. So the award might be more temporary if the person from whom it is sought is about to retire or getting up there in age. Number four is whether the marriage caused either spouse to forego or delay education or career opportunities. So did they make a sacrifice for the marriage? Was one spouse a homemaker while the other went and got an education and focused on their career? We don't want the spouse that made sacrifices for the marriage to be penalized for making those sacrifices. So the court will try to put them in a situation similar to if they had not been married and had been able to pursue those education or career opportunities. So the spouse that was able to pursue those opportunities will likely have a larger maintenance award, and maybe a permanent one, to compensate for those sacrifices that the other spouse made during the marriage. Number 5 is the time necessary for the spouse seeking maintenance to obtain education or career opportunities. So this is really looking at whether the maintenance award is going to be temporary or permanent and how long the maintenance award is going to last. If one of the spouses is intending on going to grad school and it's a 4-year program and will likely be able to get a well-paying job at the end of that program, then the maintenance award might be for those 4 years. Number 6 is a big one. It's the standard of living of each spouse during the marriage. So what's important to understand here is that the maintenance award isn't just an amount to be paid in order to allow the spouse seeking maintenance to get by or subsist. What they try to do is make the standard of living of each spouse as close to the standard of living during the marriage as possible. And if that's not possible because they're divorced and it might not be possible for both to have the same standard of living that they had during the marriage, they want to close any gap between standard of living of each spouse. So they want to make the standard of living the court wants to make the standard of living as close together between the two spouses after the marriage as possible, even if it's below the actual standard of living that each enjoyed during the marriage. And again, this might be a luxurious standard of living. So this is why we hear about celebrities who get divorced and had a very high luxurious standard of living, paying large maintenance awards, maybe in the millions of dollars, because that it's not just about what the other spouse needs to get by. They want to put them in an equal position to the standard of living that they enjoyed during the marriage. Number 7 is probably the biggest factor. It's the duration of the marriage. So the longer the marriage, the higher the maintenance award is the rule of thumb. Shorter marriages don't allow spouses to make as much of a career or education sacrifice. It doesn't allow them to become accustomed to the same standard of living. So a 1 or 2 year marriage, you're not going to have a very high maintenance award. Typically, a 30-year marriage, you're going to have a very high maintenance award if all the other factors line up. Number 8 is the age and physical, emotional condition of each spouse. So if the spouse seeking maintenance has a disability, whether it's physical or emotional, they're likely to get a higher maintenance award because they need that money to care for their disability. If the spouse from whom maintenance is sought is getting up there in age and about to retire, the court will consider that factor because they're not going to have the same income that for the next 20 years. It might be an income for the next 2 or 3 years. So they'll likely reduce the maintenance award if it's an older spouse from whom maintenance is sought. But the age and physical and emotional condition of each party is a factor that courts take a look at, and it plays into both the needs and the earning capacity factors as well. Number 9 is the tax consequences of property division. So as this property is divided, courts will look at where the money is coming from. If it's being taken out of a retirement account, there might be a tax penalty for that. So courts will factor that in and try to have the most tax advantageous settlement between the spouses as possible. Number 10 is the contributions of one spouse to the other's education and career. So this is similar to sacrifices or forgoing the education or career for the sake of the marriage, but it's a little bit different. So the contributions of one spouse to the other's education or career is, did the spouse seeking maintenance pay for the other to get an education from their own funds, or again, did they stay at home, take care of the kids while the other got an education or advanced their career? That's a big thing to consider, and it makes it much more equitable to have a high maintenance award if one spouse contributed to the other's career. Another example is if that spouse worked as an employee in the business for not a reasonable wage. A family business or something like that. So the more contribution one spouse made to the other spouse's career, the higher the maintenance award is likely to be. The 11th factor is agreements between the parties. So any valid agreement between the parties, the court is likely to honor. This could be a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement. Postnuptial means that it's after the marriage. It can even be a settlement agreement in the divorce. So if the parties have a valid and enforceable agreement, the courts will likely not consider the other factors and just focus on that agreement. Now, if there are circumstances that couldn't have been foreseen at the outset when that agreement is signed, sometimes courts will will waive that agreement and still go into this 11-factor test. Now, those are the 11 enumerated factors that courts consider. But courts are also authorized to consider any other factors that they consider to be just and equitable. Now, they have to explicitly say in their judgment that this what the factor is, and that it's just and equitable for them to consider that factor. So, because the court has such wide discretion, they're really taking a look at all of the facts and, the needs of each party, the income of each party, the duration of the marriage, the standard of living during the marriage, and trying to come up with a fair solution for the short and the long term to allow one spouse to have not been penalized by the marriage and to enjoy the same standard of living that they had during the marriage. So again, we have articles at learn-about-law.com about each of these different factors. So please check them out if you have further questions about this. Or you can also call our office and schedule an initial consultation. 630-324-6666 is our number. If you want to check out the podcast I do for business owners, that can be found at seizeyourbusiness.com. Thanks so much for listening.